So alright guys, in today's video, I'm going to show you how to use Termux to set up a simple Apache web server. With that said, we're going to be doing a bit more than that. We're also going to be port forwarding this locally hosted web server and setting up a dynamic DNS, meaning anyone we give our link to should then be able to connect up to it. We're not going to be covering basic DDoS protection, although Apache does come with some basic DDoS protection, I believe. However, with that said, we'll save that for a future video. For the time being, we're just going to cover the basics, get Termux installed, get Apache installed, then port forward. But with that said, first steps first, we need to install Termux. So down below in the description, depending on whatever device you're using, it could be a smart TV, an Android phone, or an iOS device, you want to go to your specific app store, then download the Termux application. In my case, I believe I got the Termux application from Google Play Store. However, I recommend getting the GitHub version if and at all possible, because that version's usually more up to date. But with that said, once you have Termux on and you open it, it should look something like this. Essentially, Termux is a Linux-based app. So you got your own little Linux terminal that you can do whatever you want with. So to get started, we want to actually install the Apache 2 app. To do that, we just type in pkg install apache 2. Once you do that and hit enter, it should ask you to push Y to confirm the install. Then all you have to do is push enter again. But as you can see here, I already have the app. It is downloaded and set up on my phone. But there's one thing to note, all this will take some space, so I recommend having at least 1 GB free on whatever device it is that you're planning to install this to. Well anyway, once we got Apache installed here, I recommend changing the default Apache directory. But before we do that, we want to navigate to our current, or well, not our current, but our internal storage of the device itself. To do that, you just type in cd/SD card. I know it's a little counterintuitive to type in SD card, but that's just how they label the internal storage. Just type cd/SD card and hit enter. That will take us right into our current phone's directory, and from here we can make a new folder for our server to reside in. In my case, I called it htdocs. So you could just type in make mkdir htdocs if you want to replicate that, or you could plug your phone into your computer, then just right click in the default location and make a folder called htdocs if that's easier. But as you can see, I already got a folder called that here, and I already have some example code and an index file in my folder, so when we get the server up and running, we should see something straight away. But if you want to just make a simple file in that document folder, so let's go in there, htdocs, you can just do like touch, then make a simple file called like test.html or something, and you should see that pop up on your server. But I already have files in there, so I don't need to make a file in that folder. Well anyway, I'm going to navigate back to the root of Termux, which is basically where the app itself resides. So you do that by typing in cd and your typical squiggly colon, I forget what it's called, but you just type that in to go back to the default root. Now from here, we want to edit the httpd config file to point to our new folder location. To do that, I'm just going to have some commands down below in the description. You can easily just copy and paste these into Termux if you want, or you can type them out. But either way, you need to navigate to the prefix, edit to configure Apache 2 directory, then edit the httpd config. By default, Termux comes with a program called Nano, but if this doesn't work, just install Nano like we did with Apache basically. Anyway, just paste that in or type it, hit enter, and you should get something that looks like this. From here, I want you to scroll down and look for the directory section. By the way, if you want to configure PHP, how many people can connect, and all kinds of server settings, this is the file to configure. So if you see anything else you like in here, feel free to change it however you like. But yeah, now that I found what we're looking for, which is the document root and the directory listing, you want to take this out and change it to your new directory. As you saw, I have a folder in my SD card called htdocs, so all I did was type that in here, and here And after you've got that typed in and you changed your directories and you want to save this file, just hit Control X, then hit Y, then hit Enter. That will save the file. But yeah, the hard parts are almost over. I mean, basically what we need to do from here now is fire the server up, see if it works, and if it works, we can then port forward this thing. So to actually fire this server up, you can type in APACHE CTL, basically Apache CTL altogether, and hit Enter. You shouldn't really get any kind of error, but I already apparently have this up and running, so I'm getting an error. And to run it in a better mode, I like to do a -K and then start. That's the proper way of starting it. But either way, as you can see, it's already starting, so I'm just going to clear the screen. And from here, we can go in on our phone's web browser and see if the server's locally hosting. So to see if the server's locally hosting, all you need to do is type in localhost altogether in your web browser, the 2 dots, and then 8080, and hit Enter. If the server's running through Termux, it should just pop right up. You'll either see that testing file that you made, or in my case, if you have an index.html in that folder already, it should load right up. Also, ignore the PHP errors. We don't have PHP really set up right now. This is just covering the basics. Maybe in a part 2 I will cover more advanced stuff. But for the time being, our web server is hosting and it's working. So what do we do from here to get this thing port forwarded, as well as setting up a dynamic DNS? So to get port forwarded, it's going to vary depending on what particular router you have, but what you need to do is typically on the router itself, you'll have a sticker that will have your admin and your password and an IP. You want to navigate to the current IP that your router specifies. In my case, it's 192.168.254.254. Once you navigated to there, you'll have a login field. Just give it the admin password and login ID, and once you've done that, you want to look for a section that's typically called Firewall, and under here, you'll have a port forwarding menu. And on my particular Windstream menu, or Windstream router I should say, the menus look something like this. It's really easy to understand and navigate. So at least for me, on my particular menu, to select the device that we want to port forward to the internet, it has a drop down, but if your device if your router doesn't have a drop-down, I should say, you could type in ifconfig, I believe, into Termux to get your current IP. Anyway, since I know what mine is, I'm just gonna scroll down and select it. It's my A12, which is .98, and from here you want to fill out the other fields like so. So you want 80, 80, and then 80, 80 for your start and end point for your LAN, and if you've done it correctly, all you should have to do then is click apply to save the changes. So now that we're port forwarded, to tell that you're actually port forwarded, all you need to do is go into your web browser on your phone, type in what is my IP address. That will then show you your public IP. Don't give this to anyone except yourself or a friend or family member. Make sure it doesn't get leaked, because right now if you got DDoSed, it would be pretty bad. But either way, you want to get your public IP address, then paste it in on another device. If you type it in and it opens up your website, that means you port forwarded successfully. So with that said, congratulations, port forwarding is done. All that's left now is to find a dynamic DNS host, as well as a script that will automatically update your IP address to the DNS host provider. Typically with most home routers, like my Windstream one here, if I were to lose power or if a few days passed, the public IP will change. What a dynamic DNS provider does is it will automatically update your IP to the dynamic DNS host, and it will give you a custom URL that won't change. But with that said, enough talking about it, let's just go on and do it. In my particular case, I'm using DuckDNS, however, I may cover Cloudflare in the future, because it offers a little bit more protection and DDoS and stuff like that protection, I should say. With DuckDNS, this is pretty much changing our public IP address into a static URL, and that still means we can get DDoS to some extent, but Apache can kinda handle it and shut down if something like that was to happen. We'll get more onto that in a future video, but for the time being, to get your dynamic DNS going, head on over to DuckDNS, sign in. I signed in with the GitHub page here. However, I censored all the info out, so feel free to try and find that. It doesn't exist. But either way, you want to sign in, and you'll have a token, and you'll have a menu down here that will have a subdomain option. What you need to do is type in your specific domain name that you want. In this case, I would call it something like tutorial for DNS or something, then hit add. And once you have it added to your domains down here, you want to then copy this URL. We're going to need it for later. Basically, once you have that URL, I'll have a command down below in the description that you can copy and paste. You want to change the section out here where it says your domain name. Change it to this URL. So tutorial for nds.duckdns.org would go right here. It should look something like that once you typed in your custom dynamic domain name. After that part, you'll see a token section. You'll want to copy and paste your token. In my particular case, it would look something like this. And I'll copy it right here. Now basically, once you edited this file, I'll have it down below in the description. You can then make a new startup script on your Android phone. So I'm going to go back to my phone and go back into Termux. Now I know this was probably a little bit confusing, but we're actually almost done here. I am sorry I couldn't make this much more simpler. It's kind of hard to explain without accidentally showing off some info. I'm trying my best not to do that here. Anyway, this little script that we just made, you know, with our subdomain name, in this case it would be tutorial, but you know, yeah. So I changed the subdomain and the token here to copy and reference these two things. And what I want to do now is copy and paste this into my Termux. So I'm going to just do this by typing in nano, and I'll name this the website.sh. And basically, once we're in nano here, we can copy and paste that into nano now. It looks a little bit more nicer now that I have it copied into nano, but essentially once we save this file, we're pretty much almost done. There's one more thing I want to add to this, which I will change in the description if you're just copying and pasting commands. You want to type in termux-wake-lock. I'll explain more about what this does in a few minutes, but with that said, that's just, let me get this space out of here. Hit Ctrl-X, Y to save that. Essentially what we did now is this file, you can launch it any way you want. You can just manually launch it, or you can have it set on a timer. But essentially what it's going to do is look for your public IP address, and once it finds it, it will ping it to DuckDNS. And DuckDNS will make the dynamic DNS, the dynamic IP, static. It will then be this URL. So instead of a randomly changing number that you'll have to then get a new number for every few days or every time you reboot your router, it's now permanently going to do that for you. So I'm going to just run the script here just by typing in sh website, and I don't know what it just did there. Okay, let's try that again. Sh website, and that will then run our script. If you get a KO, it means you need to try again, and OK is what you want to see. But after that, it will then start the server up just like before. I'm still getting this one error, just ignore it. It's not important, and it still did work. But yeah, from here, you can then navigate to that URL in any web browser on any device, and it should just load up as if it was on the locally hosted end or on your phone. But yeah, with that said, it is now running. Whatever we put in that HTC docs folder will then be served onto another device. Well, I should say another web browser that's requesting to see it. Now there's some things to be known. DuckDNS doesn't offer DDoS protection. Now Cloudflared tunneling, if you make an account through them and do pretty much the same thing we did here with DuckDNS, that does offer DDoS protection, but there's some limits and strange issues with that, so I recommend just using a free DNS hosting service unless you want to go for the paid for route. Another thing to note, this free DNS service doesn't host your website to Google, So no one's going to find it when they Google things. They're just going to only be able to get to it if you give them this URL. Last but not least, if you're hosting a game server, now that you've set this up, you can also start your game server and have that hosted through the same URL as well. So that KSP that we set up and ran earlier from a previous video, yes, anyone can connect to that through the URL if I gave out the URL. But now that we're done with the basics, and I'm probably soon going to leave this video off here, you may be wondering, how do we stop this server, and is it going to auto start every time I turn on or off my phone? Well, as it is right now, it will only start when you type in that shwebsites.sh file. Maybe down below in the description I'll just have a file that you can copy and paste to your phone and you can edit it. That might make this a little easier. But as of right now, the web server will only run if you run that command. And if you want to stop it, you could just turn your phone on and off. That should stop it. Or you can type in Apache ctl-k then stop. That should also stop the server. Now, if you want to make this more permanent, let's say it stays on 24/7, you can do a cron job. You can install cron on Termux and have it automated to turn on at specific times of the day, or just turn on whenever your phone turns on. There's tons of ways to do that. We'll cover that in part 2 as well. But for the time being, I'm going to leave this off here now. DTPK signing off. Peace. Yet, but either way, I'm going to show you me connecting up to my publicly hosted game Evolution, unless they add chaining to the mix like the Conwell Tour build. If you need a device